So picture this. You're driving down a pitch-black, isolated road right around midnight. You are absolutely exhausted. Your eyes are getting heavy. The humming of the engine is basically singing you to sleep. And man, you just want to get home to your bed. But the road just keeps going. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into some seriously chilling nighttime folklore. We're looking at a paranormal predator that literally hunts the exhausted. Based on the spine-tingling accounts from our source material, we're going to dissect the exact hunting strategies, the modus operandi of a terrifying entity known as the Amavasya Chhalava. Buckle up, because we are breaking down the anatomy of an absolute monster. Now, have you ever been on a dark, midnight drive and gotten that weird, sinking feeling that you've passed the exact same tree twice? It's a super common kind of nighttime paranoia, right? But in the stories we're looking at today, this isn't just your tired brain playing tricks on you. Let's look at two groups of travelers from our sources: a college bus winding through a dense forest, and four friends on a late-night, booze-fueled road trip to Lonavala. Both groups hit this exact same phenomenon. The road literally stops making sense. The landmarks just keep repeating. And slowly, this horrific realization sets in. They aren't just lost. They're trapped in this unnatural, terrifying loop, and they are definitely not alone out there in the dark. To actually understand what these travelers are up against, we gotta define a couple of core concepts from the folklore. First up is the chakwa. Think of this as the trap itself, a deceptive geographical loop that basically hijacks a specific stretch of road. Then there's the Chhalava. According to the lore, a Chhalava is a supernatural entity born from the restless souls of people who died tragically while traveling at night. But what makes our specific subject today so incredibly dangerous is that it's an Amavasya Chhalava. This variant specifically hunts under the suffocating, pitch-black darkness of moonless nights. It completely thrives on fear, and it targets people who are already physically exhausted, striking with this cold, methodical precision. All right, let's open up this predator's chilling playbook. It doesn't just jump out of the shadows like a cheap jump scare. No, it is way more sinister than that. It methodically breaks down its victims in four distinct steps: isolate, hallucinate, possess, and turn against. It's basically a masterclass in psychological torture, and we're going to walk through exactly how each of these horrific phases plays out. Phase 1, the endless midnight loop. Before the monster can play with its food, it's got to lock the cage, right? This is where the Chhalava physically isolates its prey by bending geography itself, twisting the roads so that every single escape route just pulls you deeper into its territory. For the college bus, this meant looping endlessly through the exact same stretch of the wild Kolapur-Darshiv forest. No matter how far or fast they drove, they just kept ending up right back where they started. For the car trip, they took a desperate detour to shake off this creeping dread, but it just led them to a totally impossible highway sign reading 60 kilometers to Lonavala, even though they had driven in a completely different direction. They are literally cut off from reality. As the lore chillingly puts it, you will wander this road until the sun rises. It captures those who are tired. The entity purposefully strings out the drive. Why? Because exhaustion is literally its greatest weapon. The more dead tired you are, the easier it is to hijack your mind. It feeds on that fatigue, stripping away its victim's logic and replacing it with pure, undeniable dread. They're stuck in a maze with zero exits, and their stamina is just rapidly ticking down. Which brings us to Phase 2, Masters of Psychological Warfare. Once that physical trap is set, the Chhalava doesn't just rely on brute strength. Instead, it starts breaking the victim's minds using deeply personalized, absolute nightmarish illusions. It manufactures panic to force fatal mistakes. For instance, the teacher on the bus, it conjured an entire fake replica of his home village, Borgon. But it wasn't a happy homecoming. He was forced to watch this horrific illusion of his family being brutally massacred right in the street. For the folks in the car, they were suddenly faced with a relentless, angry mob holding torches blocking the road. Later on, they stop at a totally fabricated roadside dhaba where the owner serves them a plate of rice literally crawling with live maggots. Just nasty, terrifying stuff. The crucial takeaway here is that these aren't just random, spooky scares. The Chhalava is using pinpoint emotional leverage, like making that teacher see his murdered family, and then having a creepy one-eyed man goad him into taking his own life just to repent. The entity is actively trying to break their will to survive. It isolates them emotionally, making them feel completely hopeless, terrified, and totally cut off from sanity, way before it ever tries to destroy them physically. It wants them utterly vulnerable. But here is where the suspense really hits a boiling point. The passengers in both of these vehicles lock their doors.
They are speeding down these empty roads, completely desperate to get away from the mobs and the mind games. They think they're safe inside their little metal boxes. So how did the Chhalava get inside a locked, moving vehicle? The absolutely terrifying answer? It didn't have to break in. It was already inside.
Phase 3, the enemy among you. This brings us to what is easily the most horrifying rule of the Amavasya Chhalava. It doesn't just chase you from the outside. It hides in plain sight by possessing the dead. Now, the entity does operate on a strict, deadly limitation. It can only possess one freshly deceased body per night. But once it does, it perfectly mimics a living human. It weaponizes this single possession to infiltrate the group super early on, completely unnoticed. It targets the weakest, most exhausted traveler, scares them to death in an instant, and then seamlessly just slips right into their skin. And this leads to an absolutely gut-wrenching twist in our source stories. On the bus, there's a student named Sham. He seemed to be the only guy who actually understood the lore, and he was actively helping the survivors try to figure out what this monster was. In the car, a friend named Adi was just sitting quietly, occasionally warning the driver about the road. But the terrifying reality? The real Sham died of a massive heart attack from pure terror the very first time the bus stopped. And the real Adi? He was killed hours ago when he stepped out to check the car's open trunk. The very people who seemingly had their backs were the monster all along, just sitting right next to them in the pitch dark. The Chhalava's own confession from the lore tells you everything you need to know about its power. It says, "I bind your sight and your mind. You only see what I want you to see." Sitting right there in the passenger seat, this thing has absolute, paralyzing control over their perception. Every single argument they had, every detour they took, every choice they made, it was all carefully orchestrated by a walking corpse sitting right among them, just whispering poison into their ears. Phase 4, turning prey against prey. All of this psychological manipulation builds to a final, bloody climax where the monster actually rarely has to get its own hands dirty. It much prefers letting its prey do the heavy lifting. The paranoia just becomes fatal. On the bus, the Chhalava successfully manipulates the teacher and the driver into this blind, rabid paranoia, making them accuse each other of being the monster until they violently murder one another. In the car, an innocent Adivasi girl, who is literally just trying to warn them, is beaten to death with an iron rod and thrown out of the car by these terrified friends. And moments later, those same friends are trying to strangle each other just to survive. The monster just kicks back and watches its expertly manufactured panic run its deadly course. Phase 5, surviving until the dawn. Now, as invincible as the Chhalava seems, our sources do detail that it is not without weaknesses. The entire night is essentially a grueling race against the clock. From entering the forest loop at 12:30 a.m. to the absolute peak of the hallucinations at 2 a.m., all the way to the final bloody confrontation at 4 a.m., time is literally your only real weapon against this entity. Because the Amavasya Chhalava's power is tied directly to the moonless night. As the clock ticks closer and closer towards sunrise, its grip on reality starts to slip. But just running out the clock isn't enough. You have to defend yourself. And there is an incredibly narrow path to victory here. First, you have to notice behavioral anomalies in your trusted companions. Is a friend suddenly spouting local folklore they were mocking an hour ago? Are they giving details that just don't add up? Second, once you actually identify the possessed corpse, you have to pierce the physical vessel with iron or glass to break the spirit's hold. And finally, you wait for the approaching sun to drain its power. It requires extreme observation, and honestly, worse than that, it requires committing terrible violence against the body of someone you thought was your loved one. Which leads us to the horrific realization the survivors face when the entity finally drops the mask. Just imagine the sheer terror for a second. You're locked in a bloodstained vehicle, your friends are dead, and the person you trusted most slowly turns to you with glowing red eyes, totally drops the act, and just says, "You played right into my hands. I am the Chhalava." It is the ultimate betrayal. It's perfectly designed to savor that final agonizing drop of human despair right before the kill. But in the accounts from our source material, the survivors do manage to strike back. When the physical vessel is finally destroyed, whether that's by a heavy iron rod or just a broken glass bottle, the entity is forced out. It vanishes into this cloud of thick black smoke, screeching in agony. Defeated by mortals and severely weakened by the approaching sun, it loses its grip completely. The chakra loop breaks, leaving the few remaining survivors alive. But, as you can imagine, permanently and irrevocably traumatized by what they had to do to make it through the night. Which leaves us with a lingering, deeply unsettling question. We've seen exactly how the Amavasya Chhalava uses the cover of darkness, our exhaustion, and our deepest paranoias against us. But without a doubt, its most terrifying weapon is its ability to wear a familiar face. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The next time you're on a long, isolated road trip, the hour is late, the road keeps repeating, and your friend in the passenger seat starts acting just a little bit out of character, who is really sitting next to you? Think about that the next time you go for a midnight drive. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer.